I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. We're going to make it so dry for you. Today, we're going to be talking about Wet, a game that was developed by Artificial Mind and Movement, published by Bethesda Softworks, and released in 2009 on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360.
But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, Wet is, it's a lot of things. And first of all, it is a bad title.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that. But the game is an action shoot 'em up Max Payne alike game / platform. I don't know. Yeah. It's a 3D action adventure game.
Kind of like a parkour third person shooter, action movie simulator.
Yeah, it's got a lot. It has a lot of extremely obvious inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is very explicit. Others is more like you kind of get it as you work with it. I think the obvious stuff is like Max Payne, the slow-mo bullet time kind of situation, the John Woo acrobatics as you shoot at people. Most troublingly, I think that Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, was an inspiration on this game, though fortunately only the part of Prince of Persia that I actually liked, which was the platforming.
Mm-hmm. I also thought of Mirror's Edge, which came out a year before this, and Kill Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like exploitation cinema generally, like the idea of this game being set at like the midnight movie drive-in theater, like with all of the interstitials and stuff, like that is very heavily like sort of what inspired this genre. And I think like you could even call out like Robert Rodriguez and Planet Terror as direct things that influenced this game's sort of look and style, which is all, in my opinion, these are all like good things. I think that the game takes a lot from a lot of things to make itself very cool, very easily accessible to a lot of people. And yet there are also other decisions that I think make it more, I guess, more like niche. I think that there's probably a bit of an audience discrepancy here, but we will get to that stuff.
Yeah, I also feel like there's a little bit of like Guitar Hero inspiration in like the UI and like sound design.
That's fair. And the all Psychobilly soundtrack that the game has. Which, I get it. Like, Psychobilly is a sometimes food. But if while flying through the air in slow motion, shooting guys in the head if that is not the time for Psychobilly, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what I want to start with here because I have a lot of thoughts about this. But I think that sort of like visual inspiration is the thing that most warrants like an early discussion. Like I really like the grindhouse exploitation film aesthetic of this game. And I think it does a lot to actually stick. Because I came into this and I was like halfway through the game and I said, a game has never made more sense to me than this one. Like, it feels like it has such a clear goal, and it is like almost like a proof of concept for this style of game going forward, though obviously it takes its inspiration from older games. This Wet is a game that walked so that games like Bulletstorm and even like Max Payne 3 could run. But the thing that I guess makes the most sense to me is that, like, in order to make this type of game stand out, to take it in that direction of being like grindhouse exploitation film, it really like fits so well with the genre that I found it to be just a good and smart way of handling it.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I had never heard of this game or seen it anywhere. This was like a completely new experience for me. But yeah, it does feel like experimental. Like I kind of miss the days when like Bethesda would publish like an experimental 7-hour game about like running on walls and shooting people in slow motion. It's like to maybe then use that system in another game, you know? Yeah, like you said, kind of like a proof of concept. But yeah, no, I do think like there is definitely like a creative spark here, like the genre of like gameplay and like the genre of film that's been grafted onto it do really fit well together. And not to give it too high of praise, but like it made me think of something like Persona 5, where it's like clear that like stylization was like a top priority for the game. Like everything feels very much in line with a specific like attitude.
Yeah, and like the fact that the game has a female protagonist, I think, is no accident in that regard. Like, I think that it's intentionally. It's one of those things where, yes, Ruby, which is at least spelled with vowels this time, but is still not spelled correctly. I don't know why people have such a hard time with this word, but. It is like a character that does draw the male gaze, like, and I think that is intentional as part of the sort of genre homage that it is doing. But the game's also fairly provocative in terms of like, there's like one scene where she doesn't have pants on, and it's like a torture scene, but otherwise, like, she is wearing like a jacket and long pants for the entire game. She doesn't feel overly sexualized. It feels like she acts in line with her character. But then in addition to that, it's like the game also has, I think by my count, like 5 different instances where she stabs the guy in the balls, which I think is something that is designed specifically for shock value toward the typically teen male audience for games like this at the time.
Yeah, you get like a specific pop-up on the screen that says like nut buster or something if you shoot a guy
breaker.
Yeah, if you shoot a guy in the balls, like you get extra points for it. So
right.
Yeah, she's a definite like what's it called, phallic woman or whatever that trope is, because she like wields the sword and everything. So it's kind of like a reclaiming of power and all that.
Yeah. There's definitely, I think, a legitimate feminist read of this game in a way where Ruby comes across as an actual powerful character, but in the same sort of breath, it is like couched within the exploitation film like language, so it makes sense thematically, and it is also provocative in like a going against norms kind of way, which are all things that I like. I think that this game does a pretty good job of walking that line, shockingly so. When I saw the cover of this game and the fact that it was called Wet, I had exceedingly low expectations for how it was going to treat its main character.
Yeah, especially for like the time that it came out.
Yeah,
like the cover, I think we should just talk about it now. Like the game is called Wet, which is an allusion to the phrase wet work, which is where you do work where your hands get bloody. But no one in today's day and age, or when this game came out, knows that phrase. So when you see wet, and there's like it's a woman on the cover, or it's like a low angle shot that's not specifically a crotch shot, but she has both of her guns by her hips, drawing your attention to that area, and it just feels like it just reads as a sexual thing, no matter how you slice it. I feel like a very unfortunate choice of title.
Yeah, it's like when I was like 12 or 14 or whatever, I was able to convince my parents to allow me to play a game called Grand Theft Auto, which is a game literally named after a crime. But I don't think even at the time I would have had the balls to try and get my parents to allow me to play a game, an M-rated game that was called Wet. Like, it is so, and it's like, and I choose to believe it in, you know, as an adult, that this was a masterful ploy by artificial mind and movement to like, this is all part of the joke. Like, it was, we have this provocative title which introduces the player to the world that we've set up that is this like wild thing. And that's all not to claim that this is some like highbrow art game, because it absolutely isn't. Like, there are a lot of like very, like, the ball breaker thing, yes, I think is specifically intended to be provocative, but it is also just a dumb joke. All of your power-ups have to have like things in front of the, like a little catchphrase in front of them that are just like fucking gunning for rope burn, and you're like, what the fuck does that mean? It's like, well, you can shoot while you're on a zip line. I'm like, oh, okay, you could have just said that. So it walks the line, but at the same time, it does play on both sides of it, where it's like, this is a little bit profound and cool. This is a little bit nuts humor.
Yeah. It is very much a 2000s game in that way, but it does feel like it's kind of fighting against it, trying to push it forward a little bit, but still trying to sell it to 14-year-old boys.
And honestly, I think there's a very real possibility. Like, gun to my head, do I think that Max Payne is a better title than Wet? I think that they are both terrible. I think from a marketing perspective, Wet is so much worse because it gets so much less across.
Max Payne kind of feels like a throwback to like G.I. Joe, or like some kind of like action figure name, like an 80s toy.
Yeah.
So it kind of works on that level.
Which then directly influences the Duke Nukems and the Serious Sams of the world. So there's like a definite through line from G.I. Joe to Max Payne, for sure. But I think from a marketing perspective, Wet is just so much worse, because I think that it just doesn't like... Nobody is going to go to... It's like, I don't know. It's like, to me, buying a game called Wet is like buying condoms. It's like a thing that you might want to do. But it's always going to be awkward because of societal norms.
Yeah. Dude, slightly off topic. I was at Walmart the other day, and I walked past the section where they have the condoms, and they have like a glass case where they're selling like sex toys in it. And I was like, like, we're at the point now where they'll just openly sell these in Walmart. That's kind of cool. But literally no one is going to walk up to the pharmacy counter and be like, ask them to open the cabinet so they can buy the sex toys.
That is a very good point. They should really not put them behind a glass case.
Yeah.
That being said, also at Walmart, I haven't been to a Walmart in a long time, so I actually don't know if they still do this. But they put video games behind glass cases as well.
Can I get a copy of Wet?
Kids, you give me Wet? And they go to unlock the sex toy cabinet. You're like, no.
I don't mean the KY.
I'll direct you to the Xbox 360 version.
Maybe they were counting on like that being like controversial or something, and that like selling the game or something, like getting publicity from that. Or maybe someone just thought that was a good name. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I'm sure that it is, to me, it's less offensive than the fact that they changed the name of Space Station Silicon Valley to Evo Space Adventure in Europe. Because I guess they think that the Europeans like very bland unexciting titles.
They're like, it sounds like the name of a Wallace and Gromit cartoon.
Yeah.
The Europeans will love that.
Europeans will love it. Is very much the Weetabix of titles. That's a joke about breakfast cereal that I don't know anyone is going to get. But let's move past this.
Uh-huh.
This is technically a pocket, and we've been going for a while already, largely on just the name Wet. So I do want to talk about the game. In the game, I'll ask a question about this in a second, but you run around with 2 revolvers that have infinite ammo, and you never have to reload them. Mm-hmm. And you perform acrobatic actions like jumping, sliding, flipping off walls in order to enter like a slow motion mechanic where one of your hands auto aims at a target and then you can aim the other hand freely so you can shoot at 2 people or what I mostly did was shoot at the same guy to kill them faster. Did you find this? 2 questions. First one, did you find this incredibly difficult to get a handle on for the first hour of the game?
Not really, surprisingly. It felt pretty intuitive to me. Yeah, I remember playing it. It made me feel like they started from the idea of how can we make aiming better or easier on a console game? So I feel like the bullet time thing where you're you auto aim at one guy and then you aim at the other, and it's pretty forgiving, or I don't know. It has its moments where it's janky, where you're trying to shoot at a guy and you move past him and you twist around and it's hard to aim at the guy you wanted to. So it's definitely not perfect or anything, but I think just as a core system, it's pretty solid.
Okay. I think it's not necessarily that I have criticism with the core system. It's more that it took me a long time to not want to, one, hold the button. If I'm sliding, you don't have to hold B. You can just press it to activate the slide and then move your thumb back to the thumbstick.
Right.
And so it was always I would realize it subconsciously. I was holding B and I was how do I aim? And I was oh yeah. And then have to release the B button and go to the stick to do it. And then also just I wanted to tap the right trigger button instead of holding it down, which makes it impossible to shoot or do anything. So yeah, there were several things that just to me felt very unconventional, which isn't bad, but it did make me take time to figure out how it actually worked. Mm-hmm. The game's approach to tutorial is also kind of, it's of the time.
Yeah.
There were pop-ups in the first level, and then you do a unfun, terrible, shoot at targets challenge.
Yeah.
So it took, and by the time that you even do that, I already had a handle on it. So it was a very unfun thing to do.
It's weird how late into the game it comes, because you do this whole intro mission that takes probably an hour or an hour and a half at least, and it's okay, now time for the tutorial level. It's we're good, we don't need that anymore.
Yeah, no, we did a whole, what was that? What was the whole first why'd you throw me in unprepared?
Yeah. It's all well and good honestly, to have a practice zone, but don't make me do it.
Yeah, which I really thought is what it was. I had a brief context, because I don't know if we've actually told this story, or if we did, it was many years ago, literally 6 or 7 years ago. When I played Dark Souls for the first time, I went up against the Capra Demon and fought him a bunch of times, and Andy was I think we were just on a Discord call, and I was just that's enough Dark Souls for the day. I just got so frustrated with fucking Capra Demon.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my that's enough Wet for today moment happened right after the horrible plane jumping out of section.
Oh, yeah.
And then it immediately puts you into like another one of those training missions for the shotguns. And I was just like, fuck this. I will come back to it a different day because I do not want to deal with it. Or maybe it's for the SMGs. I forget which one it is.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That the training mission right after that. Like, these training missions were unnecessary and also just abysmal to play. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then my second question related to doing the different challenge missions for the different weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use any of them? Or did you just use the pistols?
I mostly use the pistols. Like, I tried to, like, get in the habit of, like, switching to the shotguns if I was close to a guy. Mm-hmm. But, like, to mixed success. A lot of time, like, you know, like, it would... Sometimes you would switch to them and not have that much ammo because the other guns run out of ammo. And then, like, once you, like, run out, then it's just, like, one-track mine, like, just pistols rest of the level. And then I tried to use what the SMGs as well a little bit, but then kind of just fell off of using those. So
yeah,
I was mixed success at using the shotguns, but mostly just used the pistols.
Yeah, if something could be retroactively inspired by something, a temporal impossibility, I wish that this game's developers could have seen Rollerdrome before making this game, because I feel like a system that gave you ammo back without you having to go find a box and pick it up would make the other weapons so much more like interesting. It would make the combat feel like there were actually decisions to be made instead of just I do a jump and then a slide and I shoot everyone with the pistols. Because I would use the new weapons until I ran out of ammo. And then, like, every time I swapped back to them, it's like sometimes I did have ammo and other times I didn't. And it was always... Like, I really like the crossbows as a concept. But fuck if I ever use them beyond, like, the first level that you have them.
Those ones I didn't even touch.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. I felt like the weapons system got a little bit botched and that it was really only beneficial to use the pistols most of the time.
Yeah, I really feel like it should have just been pistols and shotguns. Like, just range and close up. Like, something a little bit simpler.
And then just both having infinite ammo.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah,
I don't really
maybe giving you like a super move too. That was like a big bomb or something, like a devil trigger. Like, you already have like a frenzy mode, which we could talk about those levels in a second. But like, if that was like a thing that like could charge up and then you could use for a brief period of time, that could also be cool.
Yes, I very much agree with that, because I think that like the Devil May Cry influence here is also pretty obvious. Like, this is very much a like stylish combo kill hack and slash style game.
Yeah, where you get ranked.
Yep. At the end, you get style points, which you can use to buy upgrades, which are yeah, you do. I think you get red orbs for having a high level in or you can just buy red orbs in Devil May Cry 5.
Of course.
Who could resist? But in this game, yeah, like if you do better in a level, and by better, they just mean engage with the systems more. Like, I remember the first level I got out and it was like number of kills in acrobatic mode. It was like 30%. It was like poor. And I did a mission much slower where everything I was doing was in slow motion. It was like fucking amazing. 1,000 points.
Yeah, I tended to favor the slide move because I felt like it was always easier to aim when sliding. But then I feel I don't know. I never like tested this actually, but like I couldn't tell if the slide counted as acrobatics.
Oh, I have no idea.
I feel like my score was lower when I was mostly sliding versus jumping around.
Well, I know that you do get uh there's a scaling mechanic like in Tony Hawk or in Smash Brothers, where if you do the same thing you get reduced points for it. So like you'll slide and kill someone, you get the low rider,
Right.
but if you do it again you get repeat low rider and it'll be worth less.
Right.
So,
That's probably what it is.
yeah, I got very into like I would slide if it was like a small area, and if it was a bigger area where I had more free space I would jump and into a slide.
Right.
And that was mostly how I did it. Which I thought was very cool. I liked the idea that you could jump and then during the jump press the slide button and it would combo your jump into a slide with only a brief moment of downtime. And I really wish they would have done more integration like that. Like it's so difficult to do anything when you're like swinging on bars or doing a wall run, and like the angel dive where you run straight up and then do a backflip gets you like 3 seconds of slow-mo. Like it's hardly ever worth it to do, but if you were able to combo it, like if you could slide toward a wall and then run up the wall and get more slow motion out of it, I think it would actually be really worthwhile. And this all brings me sort of, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't like. There were some of like in the training sections, you would like swing on a pole, and then there would be like a target, and I'm like, there's not enough time. Like, how are you supposed to hit it while swinging? Like, it's just like, they do not give you enough. And then if you like jump off to like a wall, you'll get like 2 seconds before she grabs it, and it's like, that wasn't very like well thought out, I don't think.
No, especially on analog sticks, you don't have that level of precision, and that is what I was going to say. It's like that's kind of like I really like the ideas of these systems, but I do feel like the implementation is just like, I don't know if it's gated by technology or if it's just bad design, but like there's something missing here to make it actually fun to do.
Yeah, it might be like development time as well. Like this is a smaller game and probably was made in a short amount of time, I would guess.
Yeah.
It's also, I feel like environmental interaction or something could help. Like you can shoot barrels, but that's about it. Like being able to like use your abilities to like, I don't know, like shoot something, like shoot things down. Like maybe like there's like some stuff like strung up in a net or something that you could shoot and they'd fall on a guy, or like something to add to more like expressive play, I think is something that this game would benefit from.
Yeah. And the game, it's not like the game is so, I mean, there's like a flaw that I find with this game that I think that the game takes itself too seriously as a game, not narratively at all, not in its like visuals or anything, but just like, or rather, yes, in its visuals, where it's like you go into a level and it feels like it wants to be like, okay, well, we got to be like kind of close to reality in this level. So everything like is just like a gray concrete hallway, and there's maybe some crates or like ice blocks hanging from the ceiling for some reason. But it never really gets cartoony with it in a way that I think this game has all the right in the world to do, because you're dual wielding revolvers while flying through the air. Like there's no reason not to do stuff like that. If you could just like drop a piano on a guy's head, that feels like it fits.
Yeah, totally. Like it feels like it could have used like maybe leaned into some like James Bond campiness, like some kind of secret underground like layer. Or like some like more creative level design, I think definitely would have benefited it. And would have made things like dropping pianos on a guy like make more sense.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but no, I agree. I think it's just sort of like, it ended up being kind of a bummer because like the game's strongest parts, to me anyway, are the arena fights, the ones where you just like, they amp up your like health regeneration and you just go around killing people and you have to close doors, and that's it. Sometimes there's a boss at the end.
Well, yeah,
like
it's nice because like your how well you're playing is what refills your health. I think that fits really well in this game.
Yeah, Agreed. And I think the fact that there are these like weird linear parts of the game where also like Prince of Persia, you refill your health by drinking something with a long animation.
Might be my favorite thing in the game though, like as far as like presentation. Like her refilling her health by like drinking whiskey or whatever it is and then throwing the bottle up in the air and shooting it is like actually pretty cool. Like the first time I happened, I was like, fuck yeah.
You're like, all right, yeah.
That's exactly what this game needs.
It is wild to see the same animation that often.
You can't skip it.
Yeah,
like if you hit the X button or the A button or whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of the X and A buttons on the controller, this game has QuickTime events. The triumphant return of QuickTime events.
Back before they were completely out of vogue.
Yeah. And that was wild. I get the use, as always, the excuse for having QuickTime events in a game like this is it has obvious filmic inspiration. And so in order to make the cinema scenes playable, they put in the button prompts and failure conditions that nobody wanted or cared about. But I think I now know why I tolerated them as a child and hate them much more now. And it's because as a child, I usually was playing a single game console for a long period. And now I have a million different input methods, honestly, mostly keyboard based. So when I'm asked to press the B button, there's a 50% chance that I get it right.
Yep. Yeah, I only ever use an Xbox controller on PC. And it's like a Logitech controller. It's not even actually an Xbox one, but it's mapped like an Xbox controller. And that fucks me up all the time because I'm mostly a Nintendo and PlayStation person. Yeah, and of course the Xbox has to do with the opposite of the Switch controller. So it just makes it so hard to remember where A and B are.
I just held up a 360 controller and a Switch Pro controller, and they're borderline indistinguishable in every way except for the fact that their buttons are switched. It's very annoying, and I played this on the 360, and it fucked with my head. I haven't looked at an Xbox controller in a long time, and so it was hard for me to sort of like put it all together. So,
did you encounter any bugs in this game?
Nothing. I saw a thing that you sent me, but nothing like that. Like, I never had to like restart the game or anything. I would run into the occasional bug where Ruby would walk into like a prop or the wall and just begin vibrating rapidly, which is a fun one. But I was always able to get out of it, though.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because it was on the PS3, which was like infamously hard to develop for. But like I encountered a couple in a way that I don't usually. Like I clipped into the wall a couple times and then like just fell out of the level. And then I had a thing I sent you a Snapchat of like I just started sliding and she wouldn't stop. Like I was just stuck in a slide animation and had to start the level over because it just like no matter what I did, it wouldn't stop.
Yeah, I remember in the Dead Space remake, getting stuck on a piece of like geometry and Isaac's entire body rotating around a central axis. And it was very funny, but I also had to restart the level because of it. And I saw yours and I was like, oh, it's the same thing, except you're in a bespoke animation. Yeah, I don't know. I think it might be a PlayStation thing. I can imagine just like from the perspective of a developer being like having there being an issue with the slide animation never ending. Like that just feels like something that could happen, and it's very amusing to me. But yeah, no, I didn't experience anything game breaking, which was positive. I feel like I guess my game breaking glitch was that my first Xbox 360 overheated, or rather had an issue. But that's a hardware thing. Can't blame Wet for that.
You got the console
that's
too
good.
wet, and you had to get a
I
new
got it
one.
too. It shorted out, yeah.
So I guess I feel like this game, despite having like some early Force or 2000s Force variety in it, like starts out pretty strong. Like it seems like exciting and cool at the beginning, and then I feel like it quickly plateaus and doesn't really like evolve or like challenge you in different ways as it goes on. And then I feel like you just see it run out of money right before your eyes at the end.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think that this game is 7 hours, and for most people, especially at the time, that would be way too short for them to pay retail price for. And the game should have been 2 hours long. Like it hits a point where it starts repeating the exact same loop over and over again, pretty much immediately upon entering the second act, like, or the third act, I guess, depending on how you want to describe this game's breakpoints. The museum level is like, right there, you're like, okay, you go in, you do a linear section, you do an arena fight, you do a rage mode section, there's a turret section, you go back to the farm, then you go to a new level, and there's linear section, an arena section, a turret section, a rage section, you go back. Like, it starts repeating the same things, and the game just does not evolve enough to make repeating the same thing all that interesting.
Yeah, like it's so bizarre, like how basically like the final encounter of the game is a platforming challenge through some fire, and then you just fight the final boss with a quick time event. Like it feels like it goes out with like such a wet fart, pun intended.
A wet, yeah exactly. Yeah, I mean, what, not to bring up Prince of Persia this many times in one podcast, but the Prince of Persia also had a final boss that was just an old man that was easy to kill.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think that doing it as a QuickTime event is at least a lot more thematically appropriate than having an actual boss fight with him.
I guess.
But it's the tarantula fight that you want to do. Like, that's the fight I can't imagine it being good or fun in the context of this game's like central systems. But it's like in your head, that's what it's building up to, because she's this like mysterious character that's given essentially no explanation. And obviously this game did not sell well enough to get a sequel that it obviously wanted to set up for.
Yeah, it was. There was supposed to be one in like 2011 and it got canceled.
Yeah. Tragedy. So we'll never find out what Tarantula's deal was. But she is like this very like vamp-esque character from Metal Gear Solid 2, who doesn't have any spoken dialogue really, and just is like a creepy porcelain doll lady. And I guess a master assassin, but she has like guns with bayonets on them. Like, it's a very 2000s action game design. But she serves as like the actual final boss of this game, and it's just all QuickTime events.
Yeah. It just, you have like a couple of boss encounters with like, you're the one with the lady with the band, the very Kill Bill fight. And then maybe like one other, like there's like a syndicate of bad guys that you're taking down. Or it's like the one bad guy and his henchmen, I guess. And then like the last three of them are all killed in cutscenes. Like, it just like, it feels like I feel like they had to have had boss fights planned that got cut.
Right. Well, or it's just like couldn't figure out a way to make them interesting. Because like your fight with Rat Boy is not different than a regular arena fight, except you have like a central target that you're trying to do the most damage to. Which I just shot it. I used all of my shotgun ammo on him, and then he would be like, "I'm hurt, somebody help." And I would just keep shooting him, and then he died.
Right.
It's like, I don't know. Like, I felt like the boss fights in this game maybe I'm just making excuses to keep holding my same bias against boss fights.
Uh-huh.
I feel like they would be horrible.
Oh, yeah.
And it was probably a good idea not to have them. But you're right, it does seem like they were planned.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the case, that they thought they couldn't do good ones, so they decided not to, like, I agree with that, but I feel like that's not the case for this era. Like, they definitely wanted to have them and had to cut them because they ran out of money.
Right. I have to ask this question. So I once again, the Bernie meme. Once again, I'm asking if you had as much trouble with something as I did. The diving out of the plane with the metal music. I found there are a lot of places in this game where and in games generally, when you fail and you ask the question essentially like, how could I have done that better? And there were too many times in this game where the answer was frustratingly, I have no idea. The car chase levels, the falling out of the plane and shooting at guys part, all felt like kind of luck whether or not I made it through them or not. Because I felt like I couldn't aim precisely enough to actually like kill the people faster.
Yeah.
So it was just like, do I get hit a lot or do I not? And normally you get through because you have a lot of health and that you don't take that much damage. But the fucking diving for the parachute part claimed more deaths on me than I think like any section in a video game since Celeste. Like, I literally probably did that over 50 times and would just get hit by something I could not see at all. Like, oh, there's a tire that is black against the night sky coming in over here on the top right to hit you and make you go, and then sit through a loading screen and restart the section.
Yeah, I didn't have that much trouble with it, but I did have trouble with it though. It probably took me if it took you 50 tries, probably took me about 25. Okay. Yeah, there were a handful of times towards the end where like I kept getting hit by stuff that I didn't see. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like such a shame too. And like the car, I agree. In the car sections, it's hard to aim at people. But like, I feel like it's such a shame because I feel like the diving out of the plane part is really cool on paper. I like the part at the beginning where you're like falling, you're like shooting the guys who are also going after the parachute. Like, it's a cool cinematic set piece thing. But yeah, it's like, it's a little too bullshit. Like, you want a section, I think you don't want a section like that to be hard. Like, you want it to have, like, almost, like, the illusion of being challenging. Like, you want it to be, like, the player to be able to get through it fairly easily and have it be, like, a set-piecey moment that was, like, they finish and they're like, that was fucking awesome. That makes them feel like fucking Indiana Jones or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. Like, you want a level of difficulty that is so low that it is difficult for somebody to fail it. Mm-hmm. But you want to make it seem like what they did was really challenging, because the magic of the scene of somebody falling out of an airplane and shooting people and then grabbing a parachute out of mid-flight and using it to float to safety is the spectacle of it. It's not the engaging gameplay, because if you repeat that section once, you immediately are just like, why am I repeating the dumbest thing in the world? Like, the as soon as the cracks start showing,
yeah,
your scene is ruined. This is why
Ruby, you can't fall fast enough.
Yeah. Like, this is why Jason Bourne does not just like fucking take a bullet and restart a thing, because you watch the scene twice and you start realizing how ridiculous it is. Like, I don't know. And it's like, it's not even that the ridiculousness is bad. It just makes the scene feel worse. And the fact that they made it so hard to do is like this game could have potentially used with the love it or hate it AAA like development process garbage where they bring people in and go like, how'd you feel about the airplane part? Because I guarantee you nobody's like, I loved that I had to do that 30 times.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I think that section could have easily been a QuickTime event. The one time I'll argue that the QuickTime event would have been better than the actual execution. And it just would have been much better. God, it was very bad. But it leads in, there's sort of like I have a visual impairment. It's come up a lot on the podcast because a lot of games don't account for it. This game was exceptionally bad about it. But also it's of the time. I'm playing it on a modern television with old hardware using the prepackaged cables that come with it. So I'm not like, this game has all the excuses in the world, but like I found it really difficult to see enemies at all. The rage sections, I found it difficult not to see enemies, very clear in those. But it was hard to like find the like paths, which made those sections like so anticlimactic because you go through the whole fight and then there are no enemies left. And then I'm just running around while a guy with a pompadour screams about going insane with the crazy psychobilly fast-paced soundtrack. And I'm just like looking at walls going like, can I climb that? Or like, do I jump here? What's the deal? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like...
So yeah, that presented some issues.
Yeah, I feel like that's a bit of a level design thing, too. Like, there are definitely chunks of this game where it's, like, unintuitive where to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's always, like, in moments that should be really fast-paced. So it makes the game feel very awkward to get through at times. Do we have... It's a psychobilly freakout! Thoughts?
My It's a Psychobilly freakout thoughts are... there's a lot about this game that's really cool. It's something I kept thinking that, like, I feel like if you had played at the time, like, you would really love this game. Like, it felt, like, very up your alley to me. Yeah, it just... I think because of the nature, like, well, on the one hand, I like that it's like a smaller, more experimental game. On the other hand, I feel like that's where a lot of its shortcomings come from. I feel like this didn't have a huge budget or a ton of time to be polished. But yeah, I like the core concept of the like bullet time shooting. I think is like an interesting way to like handle shooting on a console with analog sticks. Which is a bit harder to do, you know, than mouse and keyboard, as everybody knows. Yeah, and I like that it's so stylized. Like, I think that's really cool. I'm always in favor of games being more stylized, especially at this time when everything was like a brown military shooter. So I think that's cool. Like a cool soundtrack. I like the psychobilly rockin' soundtrack is fun. So yeah, like stylistically and presentation wise, I like a lot of it. I like a lot of the ideas, but a lot of it just doesn't hold up or doesn't come to fruition, or it lacks polish. So yeah, I think it's one of the reasons I like having this podcast is like I think it's cool to play an old interesting game like this that I never even heard of. So, like, on one hand, I feel like I will remember this one because it is unique and had some cool ideas, but did not hold up very well. So, I guess it's a definite mixed bag.
Yeah. You're 100% right, by the way. Like, this is very much a game in the vein of, like, Dead to Rights or Beautiful Joe that, like, had I played it growing up, when I talk about it now, I'd be like, this game was so fucking cool for the time. Because, like, it really is. Like, if you have your rose-colored glasses on, or if you're just, like, one of those people who is capable of putting themselves in the mindset of somebody playing this game in 2009, like, it is doing a lot of very cool things essentially like taking an established genre and established mechanics and spinning them in a way that works thematically and makes you actually like have decision making that you have to do mid fight. It's a cool system, but it's held back either by time, money, or technology. The big three things that hold a game back from greatness, I think, most of the time. Like, for these mechanics to function properly, you needed a few more movement options. Your control needed to be like 10 times more fluid than it actually is. I ended up cranking the sensitivity way up, like in the second level, because there were just too many times when I would like try and aim at somebody and just not have enough time to do it. It was like, there's just a lot going on there. And for everything that it does wrong, I think it matches that with something that it does in a cool way. I do really like the theming. I like the grindhouse aesthetic, and I like the main character. There's even a character, G, who I think is coded as neurodivergent, which I think would have been cool, except he does betray you at the end, which I'm questionable about. Also, most of the enemies are Asian people. I don't know if this is, I feel like this is more of it's 2009 and nobody was thinking about it at all kind of problem. So it's not like a paragon of virtue, but at the same time, it does do a lot of cool things that really pushed against the grain. And feels very transgressive, and I do really like that about it. I think while it crosses some boundaries in a way that are good, there's always going to be, when you're crossing boundaries, there's always a chance that you're going to cross something that isn't in a good way. So I give you like, there's so many good things in here thematically and cool things mechanically, but the game is just like tragically short on being able to execute on them, meaning that doesn't age extremely well. But yeah, if you played this at the time, I 100% can see why you would look back on it extremely fondly. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be... This is how... I once again just completely neglected to mention that we're in Fanbruary right now, and that this game was suggested by a member of our Discord community. The game we're playing next time on Pocket is a game that has been suggested to us, I believe, 3 times.
Yeah, 3 years in a row.
And appropriately, 3rd time's a charm, we're playing Mario Hoops 3-on-3.
Hell yeah.
But until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There, you can find links to our Twitter account, our email address, the Discord, where you can suggest games for next February or next week. We don't give a fuck. And you can find links to our YouTube channel and listen to all of our old episodes, both there and on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and YouTube Podcasts, a thing that I'm assured has a purpose, including ones that we did on Trapped on the PlayStation 2.
Mirror's Edge. Roller Drum.
Oh yeah, Roller Drum is actually a pretty good one there. Man, the games that I mentioned earlier, Max Payne 3 and Bulletstorm, are not games that we have actually done.
Maybe you can go suggest them on the Discord.
Future. Exactly, and then we can talk about them. And we'll compare them to Wet, and then we can do a nice little... that's a synergy pick right there. Slow motion... run up a wall and tag that like button.
Ball bust somebody in the comment section.
Oh, speaking of ball bustingly annoying,